The iconic EVO 8 wing has one major problem with it, and that is that these brackets that hold it down tend to rust out and break into pieces. And as far as I know, this was never available as like an OEM part. You can't really just buy these brackets, and also they're just a very weird design. As you can see, they got definitely some odd shapes to them. But I'm super excited to say that I do have some custom made brackets here, and these are going to be available for people to buy so they can fix their wing. So this video is really going to cover two main things. One, what you get with the kit if you bought these brackets from me, and two, how to install these brackets. Of course, I do a lot of install videos, so I want to show you exactly how to install these. So not only do you know exactly what you're getting, but hopefully you know how you can install them and determine whether or not you want to install them. Now this is just super exciting for me because, you know, I'm usually showing people videos on how to fix things and just give them a better idea of, you know, what they're looking at. And in this case, I finally get a product that I can send out to have you actually fix your EVO and fix the iconic EVO wing. So with that, let's jump into the rest of the video. So we'll start with the price. Right now we're looking at $85 for the pair. Right now, if you want to buy them, you should message me probably either on Instagram or Facebook. My Instagram is Boosted Film. Facebook is Boosted Films. I also might eventually set something up on my website so you could purchase right on my website, boostedfilms.com. And if you want to email me, I'll put my email up on screen as well. So what you're looking at is exactly what you get when you would order the brackets from me. You get a left and a right. They do have 4 nuts that would be included as well. And then also the 4 rivets. So you will need a rivet tool or some sort of riveting handgun to hold these onto your actual wing itself. That is, of course, if you want to use the rivets. Otherwise, you can modify these and do whatever you need to make them hold. Potentially self-tapping screws could work as well if you prefer to go that route. Do whatever you need to do to make it work for you. So that's a quick rundown of what you would get: the 2 brackets, the 4 nuts, and the 4 rivets. Now, as much as I like to maintain OEM stuff and kind of make it the same way as OEM, I did have a design change in this from the OEM style. As you can see with this OEM broken one, the OEM bracket has a stud on one side and kind of a nut welded on the other side. I went away from that format simply because it made it easier for me to produce these, and I didn't see any big reason why there couldn't just be 2 studs on the bracket instead of trying to line up and weld that nut. The other change is there's this one other plastic clip piece that is kind of in the middle of the 2 mounting points. I honestly have no idea what that really does other than help line things up. It definitely didn't feel necessary and just seemed like something that would only add time to the process of creating these. But the good news is if you really wanted to put that piece in for any reason, again, you can modify the bracket if you wanted. You could actually just drill out that hole, and then if you have the original plastic clips from your wing, from your original bracket, you could transfer them over to this new bracket if you really wanted to do that. As always, I'm open to learning. If you know what they're for or why they're really put in place, or if you think they're really needed, please let me know in the comment section down below. Now, I did have the OEM brackets from my black car that are still functioning, working fine in the black car, and I'm comparing it to the new brackets I made from the wing that was on the red car. You know, the obvious differences being that there are the 2 studs instead of basically just the 1 stud and then the nut that would be welded on the OEM style. And of course, that more plastic clip that I was discussing earlier toward in the middle, again, we're eliminating that with our bracket. There's also a different random hole that's drilled in the bracket that I'm not even sure really why is there in that other open circular part. Now we can move on to the install though. And the first thing I recommend doing, honestly, as soon as you get these brackets, and assuming your wing is already off your EVO, go ahead and just make sure these will drop in. Make sure they line up as is before you even try to put them onto the wing itself. Make sure they fit in your trunk lid holes like they should. There's always a chance that something got bent or damaged while shipping, so just save yourself the headache and check things over first. Of course, these can be tweaked a little bit. If they are not sitting exactly right, you could potentially bend them a little bit to get them lined up if needed, but hopefully that's not a thing you'll need to do. Now, of course, we need to attach these brackets to the actual wing, and you had to remove your end plates before doing all this stuff. Hopefully you're already aware of that. I have different videos talking about all that stuff as well. That's quite the job itself. This video is going to be focusing on just getting these brackets attached to the wing. Now, of course, the smooth edge is always going to go more towards the inside of the wing. And one issue with putting 2 studs in is that it's a little bit harder, or you just need to pay attention to when you drop it in because of clearancing issues. As you can see, it would nudge up against the inside of the wing if you don't drop in this one side of the stud first. So dropping in that back stud and then sliding it forward, it will drop in place. And then ideally you might see some of the old glue where the old bracket was, and hopefully, of course, too, that these two other holes I have drilled for the rivets are going to line up with the holes that you drilled out. There's going to be a little bit of play here again as well, but ideally you should be able to line it up with the old holes, or maybe even, again, with the glue marker from where you can see that the old bracket sat. This is where options come into play again too, depending on how you removed your old bracket. If you drilled those holes too big for the rivets I sent you, you could just upsize them, invest in some different sized rivets, or you could change the location as well. If you needed to drill into this bracket and add more holes somewhere else, you should be able to potentially just bolt, tighten up this bracket with putting those nuts that came with it, tighten those nuts up on it, hold it in place, have it hopefully lined up to the way it was prior, and then drill out those new holes if you need to. These rivets are 3/8 size rivets. But of course, in my case, it did work out well to just drop them in and then use our hand rivet tool, which you would slide over and then squeeze the handle of it. And in my case, I had to squeeze it 2 times, squeeze it once to start it tightening up, and then squeeze again, and it will break off the remaining part of that rivet. And of course, if you bought these from me or if you did this yourself already, please leave a comment section down below. Let me know if this procedure worked well for you, or if you have a better way of doing it, especially when it comes to bolting them on like this and using rivet. Again, potentially some flat tap, screws, something might work as well that's relatively flat, because that's part of the problem here, is just making sure nothing with these rivets or anything would be rubbing against the deck lid, of your car. That's why we want to get them flat with the rivets. So there we go. We got one side done, and it's probably worth doing a test right now too, just to make sure those end plates and everything clear in case something was a bit off with the way yours was cut out. Now is a good time to know. If there is some clearancing issues, you could obviously cut out a little bit, or do some more clearancing on that inside part of the wing where no one would see it if you had to. But of course, I would check that before you decide to glue these wing end plates back on. So now we do the same thing on the other side, of course. I should have mentioned the other side as well, but clean these areas up. You want to get them, get a lot of that old, any metal glue stuff that was on the old brackets, get that out of the way as well. Once again, paying attention to that clearance issue, drop the rearmost one in the hole first, and then slide it inward, and you should be able to get the front one to drop in as well. And then we're going to flip it upside down and do the same thing in this case, lining up those rivets. Put those rivets in place. Again, there's probably going to be a little bit of play here. There can be more play if needed, if you need to drill things out to move them around if they're not lining up quite right. But hopefully, again, part of the reason I did this the way I did is to hopefully make this so you can drop them in and they line up and it works well. In this case, I kind of just tried to make sure the studs that were sticking up were centered as much as possible. But really, there wasn't a whole lot of play or things to change. You could move it a little bit one side or the other if needed, but for the most part I was lucky enough and it seemed to work out well where they lined up well, and I could just rivet them in place, and I certainly hope it works the same for you guys. Next step, again, another true test. Take the wing in this condition and make sure it fits on your deck. This wing was separated, or the end plates were taken off for quite a long time, so I'm not sure if that's why, but mine was a bit narrow, so I have to pull it outward a little bit to get it to fall in place. Again, I'm not sure if that's because the end plates were currently off, or just because this wing sat for so long not being on a car. So don't be surprised if you have to stretch it out and move it a little bit to get it to fall in the holes. But other than that, ideally, we already made sure that these brackets would line up with the holes appropriately. And here's just a close-up view, of course, of showing where that other potential plastic piece could be inserted if you wanted to modify the bracket to add that part. So just close-up shot of each side showing you what this looks like when it's kind of just a mock-up and in place. I'm going to do a part at the end of this video that shows more the production side of this, but I do want to say right now that I'm not a professional welder, but I did have to weld to make these. Not a professional painter, but I did want to paint these. All that said, if you want to re-weld something, or if you want to repaint or powder coat these or do something different, feel free to do so. Just trying to do the best I can to get something like this out to people so they can get started. Now this is the point where you probably would already have had your end caps glued back on. I have a video kind of showing part of that already. I'm going to do a whole separate long video about this whole procedure again eventually. But for now, I'm just going to bolt mine on to, of course, show the process of bolting the wing in place and cover just a few small tips for you. The first tip is that you'll probably notice that you have two different nuts on each of these brackets. The one with the wider, bigger washer is going to be going more towards the front of the car. And then that other more regular nut with just a little bit of a lip on it, a little smaller washer, is going to be the one that's going to go towards the back of the car that we're going to have to get up in the little hole that used to be a bolt and now it's a nut. So you will need a socket, that can fit inside that hole, a thinner one potentially. And the nuts I provided should have enough of a lip on them where it can hold in place within that socket and not fall inside the socket. And then you can screw it in place. And honestly, getting these installed is probably easier than removing them. So something you're going to be careful of, and it's one of the drawbacks of switching from a bolt to a nut in this case, is if you drop that nut inside the hole there, you're probably not getting it back. So I mentioned that as a way of saying be careful, especially when you go to take off your wing, when you're taking off those nuts that are more towards the back of the car that you're going through that hole to get to. Make sure that it's spun free all the way, and then honestly try to tip up the socket a little bit so that that nut would stay in your socket and not fall out of the socket. That's the best way I can describe how to do that without losing it. So hopefully you don't lose it. Also, if I keep doing more of these brackets, maybe I can change the design. If it really bothers people, I could maybe try to do the OEM way where it is a bolt instead. Believe me, I've dropped that bolt a couple times in that hole as well too and had a heck of a time trying to get it out. So it's probably a problem either way. But once it's tightened up, you should be able to close your trunk. And of course, just check it out, make sure it's tight. There are those rubber stoppers you have to put back in place in there as well. Honestly, this is part of me just really testing out the thing I made to make sure it worked. And, part of the reason I needed to make these is because this wing I have that I'm putting in the red car did have the rusted out brackets. So I needed to do this job myself, but I kind of wanted to rush this video a little bit because as I'm doing this video, I've got these in the mail to people and I want to make sure that the people that have these brackets can see exactly how I installed them. So it's a crazy design. It's amazing to me that this is an OEM wing piece. I mean, I guess they probably never thought we would be playing inside the wing itself. I imagine they never thought these things would rust out, but it's something that needs to be done, and I'm glad that I potentially have a solution to help people out in this case. And for those of you diehards sticking around to the very end, I certainly appreciate it. So let's just talk a little bit more about how these were made. The original outer template was plasma cut. There's a shop local to me, Rodder's Garage. They actually have a YouTube channel, so shout out to them. I'll link to them in the video description down below as well. They do a lot of fabrication, a lot of cool stuff. But I had a bunch of these cut out. And then the rest of the work was from me on my side. So these did come, they had a little bit of slag on them, a little bit of debris that I had to deburr and grind off and make them all nice and flat. So that's one of the first things I did with all of these brackets, ground them down. Then I took the one good OEM wing bracket I had, obviously used that as more of a template to mark where I wanted to drill the holes. And then I had a thicker version of these that Rodder's Garage was able to cut out for me. And I used that more as a template. That was the first thing I did was drill the holes in the thicker one as best I could. It did seem to work well so far, that I lined them up correctly. And then I stack about 6 or 7 of these brackets together, so I can do the drilling of the holes. And you may be asking yourself, why is this one additional hole in the bracket? Well, that's because I wanted to drill out that one hole first and then have all the brackets screwed together temporarily, just so I knew that they wouldn't move and that it could keep things consistent. So then, of course, we're drilling the 4 main holes, 2 of them that are going to be the studs that are welded in place, and the other 2 are for the rivets to hold the brackets to the wing. I didn't film the other parts of it, but of course that's what I then had to do as far as I had to put these bolts in place, which are metric bolts, by the way. They're the OEM threads, OEM metric threads. So I had to put the bolts in place and then weld them to the brackets. I mentioned it earlier, I'll mention it again. I'm not a professional welder. If you want to make fun of my welds, go right ahead. I assume these should really just need to be tacked on. It shouldn't be the end of the world to have an excellent, perfect weld on these things. These are just welded in place so they won't spin when you tighten it up. So then once the two studs are welded in place, of course, I need to let them cool down. Then I need to clean things up, and then I need to paint them. Again, not a professional painter, just doing the best I can here to make sure these things don't, of course, just rust out right away like the old ones. And then once they're painted, I did some final clearancing on those smaller holes for the rivets because I noticed that after I painted them, the rivets would not fit in there quite perfectly. So after they're painted and the paint dries, then I go through the process of just drilling out a little bit extra on those smaller holes so those rivets will drop right in for you. So that's it. Then they're finally, of course, created. And so far, of every single one I've made, I have test fit just to make sure it would fit on my trunk lid as well, just because I really want these to work. And then, of course, I finally get to pack them up and ship them out to you. And that's it. That's the whole process. Maybe more than you need to know, but sometimes that's what I want to do. I want to give you as much information as I can about what I am doing and why I'm doing it. So hopefully these brackets will work well for everybody. I know they might have a little bit of a homemade feel to them, but again, that might be the reason why we don't see these made anywhere, because it's kind of a tricky thing to actually mass produce, I believe. And honestly, there might not be a big market for it. There weren't a whole lot of EVOs to begin with, and a lot of people don't want to rip open their wing, so I get it. But I feel like I'm just rambling at this point, so thank you for sticking around to enjoy my ramble. As always, if you think I could have did something better or you have ideas for improvements, go ahead and please let me know. If you actually installed these yourself, comment about that as well. It'd be much appreciated. But as always, this is Paul from Boosted Films, saying thanks so much for watching. I just want to say that domestic violence is never okay. If you or someone you know is experiencing issues with a partner and doesn't feel safe, please visit the website thehotline.org or call 1-800-799-SAFE.